Welcome back to Tallboy Radio, episode 265. And have we got a treat for you? And not just is it because Gaz is back, but we have another excellent guest, and a guest who has a story to tell and has written a book just about that. But before we say hello to him, let's say hello to Gaz. How you doing, dude?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Evening all, evening the world. Hope you are all well out in listener land out there. And as Adam said, really looking forward to this episode. I love it when we have guests on, and in particular when we have first-time guests on. It's always great to hear their stories and chat a little bit about their life stories. And no doubt there'll be one or two left turns along the way. So we'll see where this goes.
Indeed, indeed. So if we're going to introduce our guest, we will do that now. We'll do it properly. I hope I'm going to pronounce your surname right. I never cleared it up in the green room beforehand. Red Wemette, is that correct?
You can say that. A lot of people do. It's Wemette, like we met. But a lot of people say Wemette.
Cool.
Red Wemette.
Cool. Oh, so we're off to a good start.
We're off to a good start, yeah. You got his name wrong, which is amazing. It can only go up from here. So, yeah.
Indeed, indeed. So you've written a book then about your life, which is called Nobody Cares and What I Did About It. So it's here. I bought myself a copy. It's, whenever we have a guest on who's written a book, I always will buy a copy of that book just as a thank you for guesting on our episode. So did you want to tell us then a little bit about what people can expect to find if they were to pick up a copy of this book?
Oh, wow. It starts in the beginning when after I got out of the Marine Corps. I wanted to connect with something, and it was my uncle, and he was dating a gal by the name of Marion McGann, and her brother was a hitman for the Chicago mob, and when I went over to meet him, he was at her house. And she said, "Oh, you don't have a job yet?" And she called her brother up on the phone. She said, "Hi, we're coming out for the weekend. Do you have a car?" Because you drivers. And she said, "By the way, he's bringing his nephew with him. And Roy's bringing his nephew with him. And you're giving him a job. We'll see you. Bye." Click. That was it.
Wow.
So I went out there, and I didn't I went to work for him, but I didn't stay that long because he murdered somebody when I was there. And then I went into the city, and a little bit later, not long, I went to the FBI, and I told them, I said, I'm touching shoulders with these guys all the time. Mm-hmm. And I said, maybe I could help you guys. I saw one agent, and I said, "You were passing around these cards." And I said, I picked one up, put it in my shirt pocket. And when I got off my shift as a bartender, I called. And that was it. They ran a background check on me. They wondered why I would call them. Nobody ever called them. They were trying to get information from people. Nobody talked to them. But nobody cared. Really, nobody cared.
Wow. So you say like this guy was a hitman and he killed somebody while you were there. Did you see that happen?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Wow. What was
he hit him with a blackjack, and he had a pistol in his other hand.
Wow. What was if you take yourself back to that? It's not a situation I've ever been or found myself in, guys. I'm confident that's the same for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was that like? Can you put yourself back in your shoes back at that time and just remember what that was like, witnessing that firsthand?
I had just gotten home from Vietnam, so witnessing people die was no new thing to me.
Right.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense. Yeah. To us,
saying
a little bit.
Guy being beaten to death and begging for his life, that was new to me. But I also knew to stay away from it. Don't get involved. Stay a distance away.
Wise decision. So what was your first thought then when you were going out to meet a guy who was a hitman for the mob? What were your thoughts meeting this guy for the first time?
I didn't know he was a hitman when I met him.
Okay.
It was about 2 days later that my Uncle Roy told me, who was an alcoholic. He told me, he said, "Look out for this guy. He kills people for a living." And I said, "Come on, you're joking with," because he was a drunk. And he said, "No," he said, "I'm serious." He said, "Watch your step with him." And so then I kind of watched. I didn't really believe him that much, but after I saw him kill that guy, I said, yeah. It was over nothing. I mean, it wasn't over money or anything else. It was over nothing.
Wow. And was, I suppose, you said you just, I mean, you used to seeing people sort of be killed, but was there an element of sort of fear in knowing what this guy did, or was it, or is the wrong word, I suppose, or was it a, crikey, what have I got myself involved in as such? What were your feelings or emotions at that point? What once you knew sort of what he did, and then what you'd obviously witnessed firsthand?
First of all, there's always an element of fear, always, but it's not really terror fear. It's just be careful fear.
Right.
So don't touch the stove; it's hot.
Yeah.
You do have a fear of getting burned. As far as what my element was just stay back. Don't get too close. Don't get burned. And never talk about it. Just let it go.
Cool.
Pretend like it never happened.
Yeah, probably the wise choice, I would imagine, with those.
Don't follow him. Don't see what he did with the body. Don't get involved. Just don't do anything.
Yeah.
So
I suppose at that point, when somebody comes and says, "Did you see? Did you know?" You were like, "No," because actually, I suppose at that point you didn't know, because you made it your point not to know, because you stayed a bit out of it. You probably know what he did, but maybe not all of the details at that stage.
Right. I didn't know all the details, but there's a lot of people in my life that were very important outfit members. Marshall Cafano, a real ruthless killer, but we were with each other every day. And I knew a lot of things that he told me. He used to talk to me like I was okay, and he'd tell me different things. And I'd heard some of them I saw in newspapers and stuff like that. They were true. And I just took everything he said as truth, but I just let it rub off my shoulders. He wasn't doing anything at that time to murder people. He was 68 years old when I met him, and I was only 20, 21, 22.
Wow. So like you said, so there was that chap there, and you said you were rubbing shoulders then with a number of people. How did that come to be? How did you come in contact with these people?
It all started with Kurt and his brother, Kenny. And then I went into Chicago. I left. Their place was out in the middle of nowhere. It was a juice bar, a club for kids. And I left there and went into the city and became a bartender. And bartending, I went from the outfit owned all the bars on Rush Street in that whole area. There were stripper bars. There were girls, So I went from one place to the other place to the other place. I may have worked for one place, but if I got a phone call and said, "You don't work there tonight, you work here tonight," I went there. Right. And in that course of things, this was their playground. This is where they all went to play. I mean, this is where they went to have drinks, loosen up, relax, talk about things. And as a bartender, all you do is listen. You don't talk.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, dude, being in that situation? I can't. I mean, that's a very, very different time nowadays. Don't get me wrong. We know that the mafia, it still exists in places, but not like it existed back then.
It's dead. It's dead now. And in my era, in the late 60s and early 70s, it was hot. Very hot.
And it's strange because I don't know about you, actually. I've done bar work, and I've worked as a barman in a couple of different places, and I find it really difficult. I mean, you might know this by the end of this hour. I like to talk quite a lot, and I find it really difficult not to engage yourself in conversations that you hear in and around the bar. And yes, you listen to things, but I find it really difficult not to just pitch in. And when you're serving, you might dip in with the odd comment here or there. So I suppose I would have found that incredibly difficult, where I'm just effectively serving drinks and just listening, because you just collecting information rather than perhaps being involved in that information transfer sort of thing. So I would have found that incredibly difficult. Did you find it difficult just to listen at that stage, or
no? I learned that the only thing I really wanted to say is another drink, sir.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I want to say. And actually, I think it's only fair to tell you my discipline and training for just listening. I picked that up in the Marine Corps, United States Marine Corps. I mean, you just listen, you don't talk.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. My cousin, he lives in San Antonio in Texas. He was in the yes, he was in the Marine Corps. Yeah, bless him. So after that, after the bar, you had an adult bookstore, didn't you, as well?
Actually, while I was working at the bar, I'll tell you how it happened. While I was working at the bar, I got a phone call, and they said, "We want you to work at this other place tonight." And so I went over. It was a night shift. I went over there. It was from midnight to 8 in the morning, and it was a porn shop.
Mm-hmm.
But it was taking in 10 to 15 times, maybe more than that, than the bar did. I mean, it was taking in big money. And what were they selling? Air. People would come in, watch these things. You know, they weren't selling that much. So I looked at, there wasn't like a product that somebody could watch, and that's how much liquor you sold. That's how much beer you sold. But I looked at it and I said, okay. And I went back to work for Bill Niff at the Nocturne. And Kurt came in to me. We had a big fight, Kurt and I did, when I left. But he came in and he said, how you doing? And I said, I'm doing okay. And he told me about his troubles and the problems he was having. I guess his place burnt down. He didn't have any insurance on it. His whole life was a mess. His wife left him. Everybody had problems. And I told him about the place down the street. I said, now that place is something to get into. He showed me a card in his pocket that he belonged to the Nocturne, that club, since 1938. He was a member. So before, he was also a Marine. In World War II, he was in Iwo Jima. He was over in Japan, over in that area. But when we talked about that, he said, how would you like to have a place for yourself, of your own, a place like that? And I said, I'd love it. That's my dream. And so he said, I can make it happen for you. He said, if you help me out, I'll help you out. And so that's how I just jumped into it. Later on, he double-crossed me, and Marshall Cafano was involved. And I went to give Marshall the keys and say, I'm out of this. I quit. I'm through. I don't care if the lease is in my name. I don't care what's in my name. I'm through. I'm out of it. Here's the keys to the place. And it was a big ring of keys. And he laughed and he said, come back. I said, no. And he wanted to have a drink with me. I met him in a club called the Red Fox Inn. And finally, I did sit down and have a drink with him after a lot of shenanigans. But he looked at me and he got serious and he said, come with me. We went to the payphone. He put a dime. It was a dime for a phone call in the phone. And he said, dial the guy's number for me. Because he didn't keep track of that stuff. He used to run Las Vegas years ago until he went to prison. He extorted Ray Ryan. And that cost him 10 years out of his life. Wow. But I dialed the number. And Kurt answers the phone. And he said, yeah, it's me. Meet me on the corner of, puts his hand over the mic. And he says, where's the nearest restaurant to that place? And I said, Stagecoach Inn on the corner. Stagecoach Inn on the corner. 15 minutes. Click. He said, is your car here? And I said, yeah. He said, come on. We're going for a ride. These two huge guys, I mean huge guys, get in the car. My whole car goes clump. He gets in, and I'm driving. And I pulled up in front of the place, and it was just starting to snow. The weather was, I think it was end of October in Chicago. And I looked at the place, and I didn't want to go in. And he went for a walk down the street, down the middle of the street when it's snowing very lightly out. He's walking down the middle of the street, and I'm looking at something out of Norman Rockwell. I'm just watching it walk away. And the other guy says, come on, Red, come on. And I said, I'm not going in there. The guy's got a sawed-off shotgun in there. I'm not going in there. He said, don't worry about it. You're with us. So that's what happened.
Wow. So that place at that time, so the place that you had, and please don't betray any confidences or anything else, but I'm assuming there's quite a lot of money that was being washed and being laundered and this and that through these different shops, and so the place that no,
we pay taxes on everything.
right,
I deducted anything that I gave to the outfit
right.
off my income tax on line 13. It said miscellaneous deductions, and I put 50,000, 100,000, whatever it was.
Right. Oh, okay. Because like the assumption, obviously, from again, seeing various films and reading lots of articles and stuff, was that it was the whole place was just awash with sort of dirty money, and they were laundering, and they were trying to, and actually, what you're saying, maybe maybe it was a different type of sort of crime boss, mob boss. Was it all sort of protection? And because back in them days, I suppose, it wasn't drug money? Was it all just sort of protection and things like that? Or what was the main sort of thing going on?
I was different than everybody else. I went to them before I opened. That's why I had Lombardo for a partner.
Yeah.
I went to Joey Lombardo, who was his boss at the time. He just got out of prison. Marshall did. And so I went to him and said, I want to open.
Right.
What did it cost me? I did it up front. When you go in up front, they don't care.
Yeah.
Like with Marshall, he said to me, we don't know. He said, I'll tell you. He said, after we count the first time of the peep shows and back, porn in the peep shows.
Yeah.
He said, then I'll know. And he said, give me half of the peep shows. That was $500. He said, I want $500 a week. I don't care if you make $1 million or if you make $1. I want 500 at the end of the week. He said, I don't want to count with you. And I said, fine. Well, he didn't realize that was the first week. I mean, it was going to go up and up. It got to the point where I was taking 15, 20,000 a week. And he only got his little envelope for 500. Then the guy that used to pick up the envelope from him got half of that, 250.
Right. Okay.
He contacts me and he says, give me 1,500 and I quit. I'm out of here. I'm leaving Chicago. He was dealing drugs.
Oh, okay.
And I said, boy, he's going to go down sooner or later. I don't want him around me anyway. I gave him the $1,500 and the other guy knew it. And then he said, okay, it's down to $250 a week. That's $1,000 a month. Now, when he went to prison and he went away and other people got involved, the other mobsters came around and says, just because they're in prison doesn't mean you don't have to pay.
Yeah.
But I was already an informant by then. That was in 1974, 1975. And I became an informant for the FBI. I went to them in August of 1971. So it was a whole different ballgame for me.
Right. And you sort of briefly touched on the fact that you approached the FBI. You felt as though you were in contact with lots of these different people. Sort of how, and it might have changed over time, I suppose, but how often would you report? Was it effectively like a bit of a dead drop, like, oh, I've got something to tell you, so I need to tell you? Like, because what was the sort of the espionage element of it in terms of ensuring that the people that you were working with and dealing with on a day-to-day basis didn't find that out? So what was the street craft in terms of actually making the FBI aware that you had something to tell? And how did you then do that? What was that process?
It was all on my terms. I decided what it was going to be.
Right.
They had their own ideas of how to handle me as a handler.
Yes.
But I told them that I was only going to work with one agent, not a bunch of people.
Yeah.
We made up a code name for me. So when I called in, they would give that code name. And I told them that I'd keep my ear to the ground. And anytime I heard something, I would call them. Now, earlier when I was talking to you just a few minutes ago, I told you as a bartender, I used to listen to a lot of things.
Yeah.
They talk about putting somebody in the trunk of a car, or they talk about this, or they talk about that. I just mind my own business and keep listening. That's all. So when I'd hear something like that, I'd give them a call and give them the details of the guy's name, the location, whatever happened. They know that because they found the body, but now they know who did it. So it's what they called it a mole. They called me a mole. I molded my way in to the point where everybody patted me on the back and they trusted me. Now you got your own place. You're making your own money. You're doing what you want to do. We don't care what kind of car. All the other burglars and other people who are doing other things, they had to drive smaller cars. And they didn't care if I drove a Lincoln, a Cadillac, whatever I drove, because I paid taxes. I wore suits. I was a businessman.
Right.
That's the way they looked at me. business, all business. Actually bought a bank. I bought a bank so I could bank their money.
There's not many people in the world can say that I actually bought a bank. That's quite impressive. So was there any point where, I suppose, again, without betraying any confidences that you can't, was there any point where maybe you felt as though they did realize that you were an informant, or you were close to being found out and you had to back off?
No, never.
Really?
I was that good at it.
Wow.
So did you ever have to wear a wire or anything like that?
No, a lot of people wanted me to. They asked me that, and I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And what would happen was other agencies would say, we know you got a guy in there. Will he wear a wire for us? And they would have to call me because their boss would tell them to. And I'd say, no way. I'm not getting it. That means I got to testify. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
The only wire I put up was the one in my own apartment, and that was of my own choosing. I went to them and said, I want the wire.
Yeah.
And they said, you'll never get the guy to talk to us or talk in front of you. And I said, he already talks about murders. Every time he comes over, he talks about murders. That's all he talks about.
Yeah.
And so he said, okay, we'll give it a try. He doesn't have a home phone. He switches cars every other day. I mean, the guy was a hitman. That's all he did. He killed about 80 people.
Wow.
What was it like hearing those stories? So obviously you knew these guys were legit. So it's not like me stood in a bar bragging to Gaz about some guy that I've knocked off. He's going to know it's BS. The guy behind the bar is going to know it's BS. But these guys are all legitimate gangsters, killers, hitmen, what have you. What's it like hearing those stories? It must be absolute, because this is now history. Do you know what I mean? This is part of history. The Chicago mob is people write theses on it. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I think my ex-wife wrote
Right.
her thesis at university was on the Chicago mob. She did history at university, and I'm pretty sure that's what she wrote it on. So what is it like, literally, you know, when you reflect back on it now, hearing history being made in front of you, or hearing the stories that people are going to be telling for years to come?
It's different. As a matter of fact, I have some of the lost tapes. They're on Adam's channel, Mob Vlog, of Frank Schweiss. It was undercover tapes in my apartment that I found copies of in my house here, and I put them away. They asked me to review them years ago before I went to trial, and I just forgot I had them. And I thought, well, they're videotapes. They're no good. I brought them out to Las Vegas when I went out there in 2022. And Adam looked at them and he said, I could transcribe this and make it digital, and we'll put it on the show. And I said, fine, let's do it. He did. And people looked at it, and all the things I've been talking about for years and telling stories about. Now they got a chance to see what it was like. What was it like? Well, when he talked about something that he did, I'd show interest, but I wasn't enthusiastic about it. I'd go, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And occasionally I'd laugh. I said, no kidding.
Yeah.
Very lightheartedly. But I could change I was good at acting. I was very good at acting. So
yeah, you'd have to be.
Just a couple of questions spring to mind, but one, I suppose, is after you'd been doing this for a while and you got to the point where you potentially felt as though either I can't do it anymore, or I don't know, whatever that process was, but how did that then stop happening? And was there anything that you needed to do, again, without betraying anything that you can't? Was there anything that you needed to do to protect yourself from that? So what was the process in terms of then you stopping doing that without arising suspicion, et cetera, et cetera?
I knew there'd be a lot of suspicion if I decided to quit and just go away. And there's no place to go to. Where are you going to go to? China?
Yeah,
There's no place to go. So I decided I'd take down the biggest guy that I could get my hands on, which was Schweiss at the time. All the other guys were in prison. Joey was in prison, Joey Lombardo, Marshall Cafano. All the other guys were either dead or in prison. Well, when I was talking to Schweiss, he told me about how he murdered Tony Spilaccio from Nicky Santoro in Casino. But he told me about it. He said, we just beat him. We beat him till he was dead. And he's going into very bad details. Well, Tony was a good friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, very close personal friend. I didn't know what he did for business, but I knew he was connected because he was connected to the same crew I was with from the beginning. So when he's telling us, I'm really boiling over inside, but I'm going, yeah, really? Oh, wow. And just pretending like nothing happened. When he left, I went over the FBI's head and I went to the U.S. Attorney's office. And I told him, I want to meet. And I just gave him a place to meet me. They rented a room at a hotel close by. And I showed up. And when I showed up, there were 2 or 3 agents there with him. And one guy was really angry at me. He said, what are you doing? You blew your cover. And I said, I'm about to do more than that. And that was in 1986. I said, I want to put this guy down. And I told you about that part of it.
Yeah.
So I knew that when they arrested this guy, he was like the baddest of the bad. They called him the Babe Ruth of hitmen.
Wow.
And so I knew he had a free ticket to get out of jail for anything. He'd been arrested 80 sometimes for murder, but never convicted. So when the time came, I decided we put wires. I put a camera and a microphone and a recording device in my living room. And while he was in there, it would record everything that was going on. Well, they didn't let us put the murders in when we arrested him, but they got him for extortion.
Okay.
Because the money he was accepting from me, he was saying different things like, just because Lumbo's in the joint doesn't mean you don't have to pay. And I said, Frank, I don't know who to pay it to. I don't trust this guy. He said, I'll take it. I said, okay. Gave him the money. Later on, we went to court and it was called extortion.
Wow.
You see, I suppose some people would say, and I'm not one of it, is that almost entrapment? Is that you've set the camera up, you set the microphones up, you brought him in there and I don't know, because obviously I don't know the background and I don't know you, Red, and I don't know anything, but you'd almost be like, well, that's entrapment. You're effectively setting him up for that. So was that like almost like the counterclaim against you? Is it actually you've done this to entrap him in some way?
His attorney said it was entrapment because I was working with the FBI before I ever called him in to see me.
Yes. Yeah.
They said that was entrapment. I drug him into it. But the judge listened to the tapes and looked at the tapes and said, wait a second.
Yeah.
He's the one that said, you got to pay. I'll take it.
Wow.
So he never did you hear him say, well, I'd rather give the money to you, Frank.
No, he's like, give it to me. Give it to me.
Oh, he was right out there. Greedy as a son of a gun and said, give it to me then. If you don't want to give it to them, give it to me. Don't worry. Nobody will step on me.
So at that point, were you at that point where effectively you'd got to the point of no return? At that point, were you scared for any repercussions? Because obviously this guy had been up for 80 murder charges and never been to prison. Or was there any part of you that thought actually?
I was so used to it, it didn't bother me. Now, during our meetings towards the end, in the last year, in 1988, I kept a firearm handy. And somebody else was in the room and they had a firearm too that worked for me, my partner. I told him, I said, make sure you're armed. It was kind of like you guys are together right now. But if something would have went bad while he was at my house, chances are he wouldn't have said anything. He had just left and got me later.
Yes.
But if it did go bad at my house and I knew it went bad, I was ready to kill him. If I called the police and said, hey, I just killed Frank Schweiss, the local police, they would come running over. They call the FBI and they come over and cover me. All I had to do was keep my mouth shut.
Right.
You killed Schweiss? No, but then I'd have everybody on me, all the outfit. Everybody in the outfit would be after me then, because he was well known.
Yeah.
For what he did. He used to brag a lot.
I just
So that was my way out. That was my way out. Now the government had to protect me, and they had to do what I wanted them to do.
Right.
I sold my real estate, my property, and everything, and walked away with a few $1 million and was happy. And I retired, 40 years old. I retired.
Hey.
And then I got
bored. Wish.
Yeah.
Then I got bored. Being retired was no good.
Right. So then you decided to write a book. Well, there you go.
No, that's 30 years later.
Wow, blimey.
Wow. Yeah. So there's a few characters there that people will know about. Certainly in this country, where we know a little bit about the mafia. It's certainly not as I'm not sure the word celebrated is the right word, but it's certainly not as
Notoriety.
Notoriety. That's a much better way of putting it. Yeah. So the likes, obviously, of Schwartz and Tony Spilatra. Then, if you've ever seen the film Casino, like say Joe Pesci's character in there. So we were chatting at the very start. Very, very, very notorious character, and as Pesci plays him, is a very, very unpleasant, unstoppable, just real nasty individual. What was he really like?
Soft-spoken, quiet. He liked to drink his scotch, and he had a twinkle in his eye all the time. And he had a very clever sense of humor. I mean, he'd say things that were just clever. And a ladies' man, 100% ladies' man. He was never faithful to his wife. I'll tell you that much.
Did she know that, or did she know that?
Oh, yeah. They had some knockdown, drag out fights, but
right.
He was a little guy. He was only 5'2", if that. And I was 6'1", so I was a bigger guy, but he was tough. When they called him Tough Tony, that's who he was. But I never saw him raise his voice the whole time I knew him. Never saw him raise his voice. Never saw him involved in anything illegal. One time he was at my house. He used to, whenever he'd fly in from Vegas. When he went out to Vegas was in 71. And I waved goodbye to him. And that's when I started wearing suits. And I started dressing like he did. Flashy dresser. I wanted to be. So when he would come into town, he'd always stop at my place. That was closer to getting to where he wanted to go from the airport in Chicago, because he committed O'Hare. And all the other guys, outfit guys, would call me before they came over. They'd say, "Is it okay to come over?" "Yeah, it's okay. It's clear." They never knew if I had a judge, a politician, or somebody at my house. And I did have a lot of them that were friends of mine. So he would just pop in, and I'd hear the doorbell ring, and I'd tell somebody to go get the door, or I'd get it myself. "Tony, what are you doing here?" "I just thought I'd stop by." Big smile on his face. He just grabs the door and walks in. "Got a drink?" "Yeah, get him a drink." We sit around, talk, and have drinks. And then that was his first night in town after a flight. So we'd usually stay up till like 2, 3 in the morning talking. And then he'd go on. Where he went, I don't know. But on one of those occasions, I wasn't drunk where I didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I was doing exactly. But I told him, I said, "Tony, there's something we have to talk about." And he said, "What?" I said, "I'm a mole for the FBI." And he said, "What?" And he said, "You're shitting me." And I said, "No, Tony, I am." And he said, "Well, we can't talk about anything then." That's the way he looked at it. He was a real friend.
Wow.
Until
Wow.
he
Really?
Yeah.
So he knew.
He knew what I told him. I don't think he checked it out or talked to anybody else about it.
Wow, I can't believe that, man.
But we were close friends. If you have, in England, you call it a mate, right? So if
me and Beans, we're best mates. We've known each other for years.
Okay, if you, that's the way he was with me.
Wow.
We were that close. I mean, that close. So it was more important than business. Friendships are more important than business sometimes.
Yeah. So did you feel as though I'm not saying he didn't believe you, but was it like a yeah, okay, whatever, Red type, or was it like he knew you, he definitely believed you, but he just didn't care, but was like, right, okay, you do what you do and I'll do what I do.
A lot of people told me I made a mistake when I did that. But my way of doing it was self-protection. Get it out there. Talk about it. Don't be sneaking around where he catches you.
Yeah.
So when I told him he was loose enough where he had drinks and I had drinks, but I wasn't drunk. I mean, I knew what I was doing. And the way he responded was, we were laughing at the time. And I said, Tony, there's something I got to tell you. And I laughed like this. And when I told him, I said, I'm a mole for the FBI. He said, he was serious. He turned around. He stopped his laughter. He said, no shit.
Wow.
And I said, yeah. And he said, well, that means we can't talk about any business in the future.
Yeah. And I suppose at that point, that's the respect in terms of a friend. We'll talk about, I don't know, girls or cards or
lots of girls,
booze or whatever it is that you get, but we can't talk about whacking people, you know, and this, that, and the other. So, wow.
Yeah. Mainly what we talked about was girls. He'd ask me, who's that girl? Who's this girl? I was
right.
So he'd say, you know, how well do you know her? I'd say, she's okay. You can have her.
Just, I'm dying to ask, and it's one question I was, in a way, I've been dying to ask from the start. Were you in the mob, or were you? Because the stories that you've told, and it's a genuine question in terms of, would you class yourself as being in the mob, or were you just associated with the mob?
I was a mole. I moled my way inside.
Right.
Because other people that were in there looked at me like, don't mess with him. He's with so-and-so.
Right. So they would see you as being in the mob.
He's got an army behind him. If you make a problem with him, you're going to have people all over you.
Right.
Or they see me walking down the street with Frank Schweiss. We're going to a restaurant. And as soon as they saw me with him, he was death. And they see him with his arm on my shoulders, walk down the street. They didn't want to know me.
Yeah.
So they called me part of the outfit. I mean, Frank told me on tape. He said, we've been friends for over 20 years now.
Yeah.
And he said, you know everybody I know. And I said, yeah, they're mostly in prison or dead.
Yeah, I hope to not continue that trend.
Yeah.
No, neither one. But that's also was a guarantee that I had being an informant for the FBI. I wasn't going to prison because they used to give me things to say, like they'd say, okay, you can break state laws, but you can't break federal laws.
Federal laws. Yeah.
So you can do this, you can do that. Pornography was a gray area business. It was illegal on a state level, but not federally. The only thing illegal about it federally was obscene literature being crossing state lines. So did I do some of that? Yeah, I did it. Did they know about it? Yeah, they did. They encouraged it. They wanted me to go further and further and blow myself up into somebody that was more important than I really was. And other people would gravitate towards me. They saw money. And when they saw money, they wanted a piece of it.
Yeah. See money, see opportunity. Yeah. And yeah, I literally, I'm fascinated by it, Red, just in terms of how you can be so immersed in that environment. I genuinely can't even imagine what that was like back in the day, and how you can be so immersed in that environment and other people perceive you to be in the mob or certainly associated with the mob, but then effectively you've got this like not quite split personality, but a dual role where you are an informant. It's like, I'm listening here, but I'm telling these here. And it's like, I mean, I can't imagine what that would have been like for you almost day to day, week to week, month to month, sort of, you know, back in the day. And yeah, I say hats off to you. You know, you've obviously, you know, you've obviously seen lots of things go on in your life. So yeah, it was just a question I had to ask, I suppose, anyway.
This is the same pistol I carried in the small of my back for 20 years.
Holy shit.
Yeah, wow.
Wow, look at that.
That's no small pistol.
No, it's a 45.
Yeah.
Combat Commander, a 4-inch barrel. But people would see me wear it, and I wasn't a cop. Even the cops wouldn't bother me. The local police, they didn't want to bother me. They were afraid.
Did you feel not like a Superman. Did you feel not quite above the law, but like you were
Untouchable.
walking? Yes, but hey, there's a great Did you feel untouchable?
I did feel above the law. As a matter of fact, I always had a pocket full of at least $10,000 in $100 bills, and it was here. I could buy anything. You got a problem? I'll fix it.
Jeez, man.
I had a guy rob me once, and there were a bunch of cops standing around. I said, "What are you guys doing standing around? Go get the guy that robbed me." And they just looked at me. They're reading porn magazines in my store. And
do you want to name them? Name them now. I'm joking.
Bobby Signoretti and his brother. Signoretti. You guys, if you're out there, I'm still here. At any rate, I turned around and there was a commander in there. And I turned around and said, you guys, $1,000 for every bullet you're putting the guy that robbed me. They all left. It was like cockroaches. I mean, they all just left. $100 was a lot of money in those days.
Yeah.
$1,000 was like unheard of. They didn't make $100 a week.
Wow.
So they were gone. 15 minutes, they came back with somebody.
Okay. Yeah, I bet they came back and said, "Pay up now. Come on, pay up." No,
not at all. Nobody ever acted that way towards. That's disrespect. You don't order me around. I'd have looked at him like, "Here's your money." I'd thrown it on the ground. I don't do that. But what did happen was after they left, the commander turned around. He looked at me, and he said, "You can't do that. That's a bounty. You can't do that." And I said, "I already did it. It's done. What are you going to do? Lock me up? Go ahead, lock me up. I'll be out in 5 minutes. I'll be out on bond."
I mean, like I said, there's the untouchable aspect of it, but whenever there's turf wars, mob wars, what have you, but these people, there's the same. If somebody oversteps boundaries or people decide to take actions against you, like how Tony Spilotro was killed, and we'll get back to that in just a second. Was there no part of you, especially once you talked to the FBI, you always felt like you were looking over your shoulder a little bit?
No,
never.
Wow. Never. The way I did it in the book, if you read about the meeting at the Lion House, was at the Lion House at the Lincoln Park Zoo. I picked the place. I picked the time. I was there 2.5 hours early just to make sure the lay of the land, to make sure nobody was watching that wasn't watching. Then I went inside and I waited alone, nobody with me. And I was wearing cowboy boots, Western boots, and blue jeans and a Stetson hat, totally out of character for being at the zoo. And nobody would ever recognize me. Nice disguise. These guys walk in, one guy lays back and the other guy's goes by the big cats, lion house, as lions. He goes by the big cats over there. And I can see him right away. Suit, small thin tie, wingtip shoes, and white socks. Very conservative. And the minute I saw him, I said, "That's my guy. That's the guy who's on the telephone."
Yeah.
So I kind of edged over to him, just like I'm looking at the cats, and he's eating popcorn. They get nervous and they couldn't have sweets because they get too fat. And I was skinny. I was skinny those days. I only weighed 150 pounds, 6'1", 150 pounds. So I made my way over just casually, not even looking at him. And when I was right next to him for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and he's just munching away like this, I said, "Hey, John, how you doing?" And he looked at me like, "Wow." And he said, "Come on, we got to get out the back way. We got to get out of here." And so we went out the back way. We went to a non-outfit community, and we sat down. We ironed out all the rules. And he told me, he said, "You're never going to get rich doing this." He said, "I'll give you $25 right now." And he did. He gave me $25 cash. I had to sign for it. But I also had to pay for their food. I paid for that.
So you're out of pocket then?
Yeah. So it really wasn't that much. But when I signed it, it said for cab fare, expenses, food, cigarettes, whatever.
Mad. It's crazy. Yeah. So taking you back then into that room, when obviously, like you just said, like yourself and Tony, very, very good friends, very close friends. That must have been we didn't appreciate it then when you first telling us that story. To hear, I mean, you obviously knew the guy had been whacked or 86 or whatever it was called back then. You found about that. That must have been difficult.
I didn't know he was in town. He didn't stop by to see me. And it was on the 14th of June, 1986. And when he didn't show up, and the next day it was on the television, radio, everything that he was missing, I knew then. Tears came out of my eyes.
Wow.
And I said, I know he's dead. I know he's dead.
Wow.
Something happened to him. Well, they didn't find him for a couple of weeks. They buried the bodies in some cornfield. But I was very upset, very upset. Personal friends of mine didn't come near me during that period of time. I went upstairs and just stayed drunk for a couple of weeks. And
wow.
Then later on, Frank is just sitting there and he's telling me, yeah, we did this. Yeah, we did that. Yeah, we did this. And, oh, really? Oh, wow. But he's looking for a reaction because he knew me when I met him. I met Tony years ago, 1968. So he looked at me and he said, he's looking for a reaction. And there was no reaction except, ooh, ah, like totally just, dissembled from the whole thing.
Wow.
That's what I decided at that moment. I'm going, I'm going to get you. You don't want to know what was going through my mind.
One of the other questions I had was, you mentioned the mob as such, and did they have like a stranglehold on affecting the whole of Chicago? Who were their main? Who was the guys they had the beef with? Was it the Irish? Was it whoever? Was it who were the other people that maybe were trying to sort of muscle in on the mob, or literally was it just the mob and that was it and they ruled everything?
Nobody muscled the mob, the outfit.
Right.
Nobody muscled the outfit. The outfit was Chicago. Now, if you were from another city and you came to Chicago, you better do what I did: go to somebody and ask for permission to move in.
Really? Was it like that?
If they say no, the place will go up. It'll be explode. They'll make a parking lot out of the building, or they did it at regular, or they will burn it out, or they'll grab you, and you'll be in a trunk at the airport.
Jeez.
And then your family will get notified and everything else by the police, and they'll say, okay, he was someplace he shouldn't have been. So they advertised. They leave bodies around, and that's an advertisement. And when you advertise like that, it throws the fear of God into a lot of people.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, that'll work.
It's
just, I find it fascinating, like scary but fascinating at the same time. Just, you turn down the wrong street, you cast a guy at the bar the wrong look.
Yeah.
Just like
it's not like that. It's not like that at all. That's in the movie.
Oh, really? Is that the movies then?
Somebody hits your car, something like that. You get out and you say, no problem. Don't worry about it. You don't have to call your insurance company. I'll take care of it. Here, your car's hurt. You hit me. Your car's hurt. Here's some money. Wow. And they look at you like, gee, I got away cheap. No, they're going to talk about it. And it's advertising.
Yeah.
It's good business.
Makes sense. So one of the other characters that you mentioned there a little while ago, who probably, I don't know, I think we're probably a little less familiar with him in the UK, is a chap by the name of Joey the Clown Lombardo. Now,
a very close friend of mine, very, very close.
Yeah, so he was, and I've like I say, I did a bit of reading up on this guy. He was a bit of a character, wasn't he?
He was. Joey started out as a thief back in the early 60s when he was a kid. And he got into loaning money out, juice loans and everything else. And eventually he got involved with the Teamsters Union. And the loans that went to Las Vegas and everything, they went through him and Alan Dorfman. So he just kept rising till he became the boss. But when he became the boss of that crew, the Grand Avenue crew, it was like Phil was in jail. Milwaukee Phil was a real powerhouse, an old timer, friend of Capone's back in the day. Real tough guy. I mean, very, very tough. In the movie Casino, they talk about putting the guy's head in a vice.
Yeah.
That was Phil that did that. Tony was there, but Phil did that.
Wow.
I mean, Phil was bad. And his face was not up, it was down, face down. They put the guy in, and he put his head in the vice, and he said he wanted to know where the other guy was. They were fighting the one guy that they had to want him, but they wanted to know where the other guy was, and he kept squeezing it. And the eye popping out was an accident. Phil didn't want that to happen. So he said, get rid of it, cut his throat, get him out of here.
Man.
He's ruthless.
Every one of those guys that was a made guy was ruthless. If you knew a made guy, he had to kill at least, I don't know, he had to kill somebody to get there.
Right.
And so he had to be treacherous. He had to be somebody that was bad. One time I got leaned on by a guy called Mike Galita. He was a made guy. He went back to the 30s. And old man, but he was older than me, like maybe 15 years older than me. Tough guy. But he didn't come to bother me himself. He sent a couple of his muscle men to see me. And I knew what to do. I wasn't like other people. Nobody gave me any instructions. I just knew what to do. Probably listening to the FBI and listening to the Alpha guys I knew. And I told them, I said, get a road map. I told the guys, the muscle guys, I said, get a road map before you come around here. And I said, go back to whoever sent you here and tell them they made a mistake. Now get out of here. Now, most people would cower in fear. I didn't. Of course, I had a pistol handy too.
Yeah, that'll help.
I looked at one guy and said, you're 45 material, no 38s with you. But that's how it was. That's how it was back in those days.
Wow. So tell us about the Joey the Clown and Lombardo, because like I say, he was very famous for his mugshots and his sense of humor.
There's one that you'll never see. They got rid of it off the internet, but back when he was 16 years old, he was arrested, and he always had a sense of humor ever since he was a kid. When I saw the photograph, I asked him, I had a copy of it, and I said, Joe, you want to tell me about this when you're a kid? And I said, what were you arrested for? And I showed him the photograph, and it was a lineup of a bunch of kids. Joey turned around, dropped his pants, and mooned the camera. And I said, is that you? And he, where'd you get that? And I said, some cop gave it to me. And there was a whole story that he told me about what he did when he was a kid to get, to have that happen. But he started out, he was very, there's a thing on the internet about him where he's running around with a newspaper over his face because he didn't want to be seen. He didn't want to be recognized. But he got in trouble a few times. Another time he fought with a police officer. He ran, and he's got a mugshot where he's bleeding. In 1980, he's bleeding. His nose is kind of bent over, and he's bleeding out of the mouth, and that's his mugshot. I've got a copy of it. Anyway, it's one of those kind of things where when he told the judge said, what happened? And he said, oh, I thought they were thieves. That's why. or like one judge asked him when he was asking for bond. He said, well, where were you? And he said, well, let's just say I was unavailable. I was unavailable. So, he had a sense of humor. One of the funniest things I saw him do, I don't know if you heard of this or not, but probably not, was Mikey Switek was Polish, and he was part of our crew. He was a burglar, also a demolition expert. This guy can make it. He made a lot of parking lots. Let's put it that way. If there was a building there and they wanted it gone, it was gone.
Wow. Because
Mike could do it. But Mike lived very well. He just died about 3 years ago. Mike did. Mike and I had no beef with each other all the way, even after all the publicity and everything. He said, you son of a gun. He said, all that time I didn't know. Mike went away for a firearms charge and cocaine. But he had this necklace that I write about in the book. It's a huge necklace. It had nuggets that were like that big. I mean, they were really huge. coming around. And then he had a big medallion that was a Mexican gold piece. It was a gold necklace and a gold medallion. I don't know how much it was worth. It was in the 70s, but gold, I think gold was about $600 an ounce back then. This thing had to be $25,000, $30,000 at least.
Wow.
Joey sees it on his neck. Everybody saw it. He made it stood out like a sore thumb.
I can imagine.
But he was Polish. He wanted everybody to see it. Joey saw it and he said, "Let me have that necklace. I'm going down to Miami. I want to impress the girls down in Miami." And so he said, "Sure." He gives it back to him, or gives it to him. Joey goes to Miami, comes back. He doesn't give him the necklace. So one of Mike's friends comes to me and said, "You know, Joe, ask him for my necklace." I said, "I'm not getting involved in this. I'm staying out of this one." And so I went back and I mentioned it to somebody that knew Joe. I said, "You know, he asked for his necklace back." And he said, "Yeah, right. Okay." And, you know, like that's not happening.
Yeah.
So at any rate, he was sitting by the pool and Mikey Switek walked over to him by the swimming pool where we all used to hang out. And he said, "Joe, do you think I could have my necklace back?" He said, "Oh, yeah, sure." Reaches in his pocket. He had a suit jacket on, or kind of a jacket type thing by the pool. And he reaches in his side pocket and he comes out with this very thin religious necklace with a cross on the front of it. And he goes like this. He has to turn his like this. And Switek looks at him. "That's not my necklace." He said, "Sure it is." He said, "It's yours, the same one you gave me." And he doesn't want to, get too much of an argument with him. So he takes the necklace back and he says, "I don't think this is my necklace." And he said, "I'm positive it's your necklace. It's yours. I handed it to you, didn't I?" Now we're getting to semantics. And so he says, "Mine was a lot bigger. It was thicker." And he said, "When I went swimming in the salt water, it probably evaporated."
Brilliant.
What's the guy going to say?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's amazing.
He had a sense of humor. That's a story. There's a lot of stories I could tell you, hundreds of them. When you, in the very beginning of this podcast or broadcast, whatever you said about, we're going to tell you about my life, there isn't enough time in 1 hour to talk about my life because there's too many stories. That one probably took up 10 minutes.
That's fine. That's fine. I know. Listen, I've listened to it. And like I say, that's the reason why you put it in a book so people could enjoy them.
Yes.
So outside of the mafia as well, just to chuck a couple of other things in there as well, and those kind of things, and we'll touch on that just before we close out. But you come, there's a couple other characters as well, some famous folks that you'd maybe come into contact with. So one of your customers at the adult bookstore, he met a very unusual end as well at the hands of one Jeffrey Dahmer, didn't he?
Yes.
Do you want to tell us about that? And,
he wasn't a customer of mine. He was a relative of a customer of mine. That's all. It was Dahmer was a customer of mine.
Really?
Dahmer was a customer of yours. He came into your shop.
Yes, quite
Wow.
often. And what he did was he met this guy. He was homosexual, and he met this guy, and they left, I guess, to do something in a hotel room. He went to the hotel, the Drake Hotel, which is about 2 blocks away from my store. And we didn't see him again. Nobody ever saw the guy again. And later on, after Dahmer was arrested, they said one of the people that he had taken out, and he talked about everything he ever did once he was, he broke down. Yeah. He had true remorse for an imbecile. But he told him about taking this guy to the Drake Hotel, and he didn't know how he was going to get the body out. So he went downstairs and got 2 pieces of luggage and chopped them up in a bunch of little pieces and put them in the luggage so I could carry him home to Milwaukee.
Right.
Wow, I mean, did Did you ever meet Dharma when he was in the store? When he came into the store, you never met him. No?
Never met him. No.
Oh,
That one is such a good story, man.
My customers or my employees that work the store, said he was really weird. That he always was trying to drug heterosexual males.
Really?
And he was weird. He just liked to drug them and then rape them. So he was not somebody they'd really want to talk to or know.
No.
Is that going to mess up your broadcast? What I just said?
No. Oh no. Don't worry about it. No, it's fine. No.
We're liberal. We're liberal, and we will share everything, and we won't edit anything out because I think that's important.
Well, on YouTube, where I normally do broadcasts, you're not allowed to say the word rape.
No.
I mean, you just can't say it. Period. It's
this will go out on YouTube as well, but we don't do an awful lot with our YouTube footage. To be honest, we're more bothered about it as an audio broadcast, and in terms of that, like we aren't monetized in any way. We took a decision a couple of years ago that just for our own integrity that we weren't going to make any money out of this. We weren't going to seek advertising for any of this, so that we didn't have to dance to any of those rhythms. So we're quite comfortable with that. You can say what you like on Tall Boy Radio, and that goes for anybody else who's listening out there. If you ever as a guest, say what you like. We'll listen to it. We enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we are around about the hour mark. I don't really want to let you go.
No, I don't really. And as you've just said, Red, there's so many more stories that you could absolutely tell us. And it's strange because guests that we have on, particularly for the first time, a lot of the guests we're like, oh my God, you're amazing, and we'd love to have you on again. There's the odd one or two that didn't go that well, but you are absolutely in that first category where we absolutely need to have you on again at some point, just to go through some of the things that you've said that you could fill another podcast full of stories about various other things. So I just want to say, for me, like, a massive thank you, and I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to your stories, and obviously we'll try and publicize you. We'll put out the book and everything else on all of our social medias and stuff. So just a massive thank you for me, really, Red, in terms of thanks for your stories, thanks for sharing your life story to a certain extent, and fingers crossed there's another episode or two where you can share a little bit more.
Yeah, 100%. Welcome back on any time. But before you go, we can't let you go without giving you your book another shout out. Do you want to tell the good folks who are listening about it and where they can pick it up?
It's called Nobody Cares and What I Did About It. The best place to order it is Amazon, but if you go to a bookshop, they'll order it from Amazon because that's the only place that prints it.
Right.
And then they'll give it to you. In Europe, I found that the people that I used to, especially London and Scotland and other places in the UK, I do sell them autographed, and I don't charge any more than Amazon does. But people that are in the UK, it's very difficult now. Things are difficult during our last administration. Anything sent to the UK has to go through customs. So they rip up your package and everything else. There's no guarantee you're going to get it. So I stopped shipping.
Really?
The best place to get it is on Amazon. If you're an Amazon customer, if you're not, your local bookshop will have it in their catalog, and they can order it for you and get it that way. It's not on the shelf anyplace. I published it in 2016. And it's been around some time, and there's still a lot of people that are buying it. I check it every day. I look at the balance to see what's going on.
That's good. And I picked it up from Amazon myself. So before we let you go, is there any short stories out there you want to leave us with from the book? One last story, because we've really enjoyed listening to them.
You're asking about different demeanors of different people. They all had different personalities, every one of them. There was no two that were alike. Tony had his personality. He was like a peacock. Joey had his wittiness, and they were both partners. In the very beginning, they were all, like you would say, mates. And they used to steal together. They'd go in, dig tunnels underneath a bank, and steal the money from a bank in the middle of the night, and they got away with everything. They were good at it. That's why they rose to power. Tony had Phil was the boss then of all the mob in Chicago. Sam Giancana was out. He was dead. But Phil came around and they all met together. I met at the same place. So I guess I was part of them. And he said, who wants to go to Las Vegas? And Tony said, I do. Joey was more of a family man. He had kids. They lived in the same building that his wife owned, or her parents owned it. And when they got married, they lived in another apartment. There were several apartments there. So when their parents died off, they stayed in the building. Then their kids stayed in the building and everything else. Joe Jr. And he ran a union for his dad. It was just the way it was. So Joe stayed home and rose in power. Tony, he went out to Vegas for the flash, for the fast life. And he got it. He got all the flash he could ever have. Had a good time. But he died young.
Yeah.
Way too young. 48 years old.
Right.
And he was gone. It was sad.
Yeah, that's too young. That's absolutely too young.
They all had different personalities. Every one of them had a different personality that I knew. Some had a bulldog personality where it was all business, and those people didn't come around me because I'd just be not available for them.
Yeah,
they had something to say. I always knew somebody that had more direction or power than they did. But generally, they came to me for a favor. Louis Eberle, who was in charge of the Grand Avenue crew when Joey went to prison, he was getting busted constantly on some gambling. His guys were gambling, and it was costing him a fortune. I mean, a fortune. We're talking maybe 50 grand a week. And so he came to me and he said, one of the guys told me that you know this cop. And I said, yeah, I do. He's a good friend of mine. And he said, see if there's anything you can do for me. And I said, what do you mean? And he spelled it all out for me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a wire on or anything. He just spelled it out for me. And I said, okay, I'll talk to him. I said, I can't guarantee anything, but I'll talk to him. And he said, well, does he work with you? And I said, yeah. He said, does he charge anything? And I said, no, we do it as favors for each other.
Yeah.
So he said, look, there's 20 grand in it for you if you can set it up.
Wow.
And I said, well, don't worry. It's not even a matter of the money, Lou. I'll do it because you asked me to. And I went to the guy and I talked to him because I wanted to get back to the FBI.
Yeah.
I never did get back. The guy was a good friend of mine. And he said, nah, he said, I'm not. He said, we're working with the feds. And he said, there's somebody watching me all the time. And he said, I would never do it. No way. So I called the guy back up. There was a problem about calling him too, because I didn't know where to get a hold of him. And so the guy that was with him, one of his drivers, whoever brought him there that day, he told him, he said, give him your phone number so he could reach me. He says, give him my number. What do you want me to give? He looked like he was going to give him a slap on the head, you know. So he said, give him your number. So he gave me the number. I called. He comes back around. And I said, there isn't anything I could do for you on that problem you have. I can't fix it for you. And he said, well, I know you did your best. Thank you. But that's how I was. That's the kind of person. Now, he was a made guy, and he died at 52 years of age in 1987. He died of pancreatic cancer. His name was Louis Eberle. His father was Tommy Ryan, and Tommy Ryan was part of the Gambino family in New York, I believe. Right. And they shot and killed his father on the street, and that's why he stayed in Chicago. And Tony Accardo put him on house arrest so he couldn't go back and avenge his father's death. He was Sicilian.
I do have one last question, actually, that I can't let you go without asking you. So obviously you've handed over a lot of information then to the FBI about a number of people who have friends and relatives within the mafia. Was there any ever fear of repercussions for yourself?
No, never. Yeah, I guess once or twice. I used to live in another part of Florida. I live in Panama City Beach now, which is up in the Panhandle. It's over more towards the west of Florida too. I'm not far from Alabama here. Okay. But when I lived down in, I'm trying to think of the name of the town. It's where Trump lives. I'm thinking of all these other counties down there. I lived in Palm Beach.
Right.
In Palm Beach, I went down to get a guy I knew that was cleaning my pool. Broke his. They got in an argument. Two other guys, and that was back 2000 something, and he had he smoked marijuana. It was a pipe, a long pipe type thing. And it was a particular brand that was called Rorer, Rorer. And they were kind of rare. And so I looked and I found a shop that had them down in Fort Lauderdale. So I get in the car and I said, come on, I'll get you a new one. You guys stop fighting. Fix my pool. Don't worry about that. So I brought him down there. And on the way down, I get out of the car and I'm walking along the sidewalk and I see Marshall Cofano, fresh out of prison. Now, he knows my whole story. I've been over on the news a lot. But he was walking with another guy from New York and Lucchese family. At any rate, he's walking towards me. Little old man with a cap on. And he just tipped his hat and cap, and we just walked past each other. Never said anything to each other. I get to the shop, and there's a lot of New York guys over there on the east coast of Florida. So even Miami area, that's a lot of East Coast guys. But when I get to the shop, there's a guy in the shop, and I walk in the shop, and he says, "Red, how you doing?" And I said, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you." And I got these two young guys with me. I said, "I haven't seen you in years. What the heck happened to you?" And he said, "What happened to you?" And I said, "I don't know. I moved to Florida. I retired." And he said, "I got busted. I went to prison." And so then he's telling me, and he was out of New York. And I said, "Whatever happened to Teddy Rothstein?" And he said, "He had a heart attack and died when we got busted. We got raided and he died." And I said, "So you left the porn business?" He said, "Yeah, now I'm in the head business, or head shop." He said, they were bothering me here about selling pornography. So I just sold this stuff. But that's part of life's little. Was I afraid? I ran into a lot of different people. And on the way home, I had a license plate. That license plate used to give your county here.
Yeah.
If you lived in Palm Beach County, it would say Palm Beach County. And you could still get them like that. But if you pay $50 extra, you can get one that says Challenger, the Challenger ship that blew up, spaceship, or you can save the Panther, or you can get Marine Corps, whatever you want on. So I switched to a Challenger license plate after that. I was concerned that somebody would check the tag on my car and they would know where I lived. And I do have a different name. I went through the undercover division of the FBI. I do have a different name that I actually use on my credit card, driver's license, and everything else, my home, whatever.
Wow. It's a different life.
It's a different life.
It's very different. It's almost, I've had newspaper reporters and television reporters that interview me that said I lived like an undercover life of a CIA man or something like that. Very different.
Wow.
Yeah. Honestly, we've really enjoyed this last hour or so with you. Can't thank you enough. I hope plenty of people go out there and keep buying your book, reading your story, and listening to this and all the other podcasts that you do and you share, because you're very good at sharing that stuff out there. So thank you again for just sharing an hour of your time with us, because we really, really appreciate it, don't we, Gazza?
Oh, 100%. And as I said, a few minutes ago, it definitely sounds like it's teed up for another episode. So Red, if you're willing, we'd love to have you on in the future again, talk about a couple of different stories and how life is treating you now, and sort of post what it is that you've done. So I've thoroughly enjoyed the last hour. It's been amazing. Love listening to stories, and again, I just can't thank you enough, and very, very, very much look forward to the next time.
Indeed.
I enjoyed you guys having me. I didn't know what it was about at all, but thank you.
Yeah, a lot of people don't.
It's some people even after the hour still don't. But there we go. That's just what we're like.
It's the accents, yeah. So, thank you very much. We'll wrap it to a close, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to get Red back on in the very near future. Good evening.